Welcome back. In this session, we are going to look at exploring JSON document that contains array and that we're going to use the JSON value as well as the OPENJSON function to query this array data. Let's start by looking at the file. What I have done is I have created a variation of the payment type file that we looked at in the last session and added in that it let me open the file and take it through what I have done so I can see the payment type stays as it is. But I made the payment type description into an array, and here for the first record we got a read that contains a subtype and a value. And similarly, if you go down to the line number 5, I've got two occurrences of the array. Let's switch over to Synapse Studio and start writing the SQL. So as we said, the first one we want to do is to use the JSON value function. So let's copy the select statement here. And then we'll make the corresponding changes. So here the first change is it's called payment type underscore array. That's the name of the file. And if I run this as it is, let's see what happens. And then we can make the corresponding changes. And you get the description as null as you can see here. All of the descriptions of null. That's because now the payment type description itself is an array and we need to get the elements from the array. So what you can do is, if you wanted to get the first occurrence of the array, you can specify. The index is 0, and then you specify the object within the array that you want to select. In our case, if you remember from the file, the object we would want is the value. So we want the value. That's the description. So let's say value. And now that will give us the value from the array. Let me run that again. And as you can see, we've got the payment type description says credit card, cash, no charge, dispute, unknown, and void. But if we go back to the file, if you remember for the payment type 5, we've got two descriptions, but we only have one entry here. That's because we are only looking at the index, 0 of the array. And the second value would be in index 1. One approach to getting the value of the second description from index 1 is to create another column. So let's do that. I'm going to call this one send underscore 0, and then I'm going to copy and paste that and make the changes to use index 1 here. And that would be index 1 as well. And let me run that. And as you can see, we got two columns. And one of them has got the first index value and the other one's got the other index value. This is one approach, but this is not ideal because of two reasons. One is, whenever you join to this data from somewhere else, you would want to join using the payment type and get the payment type description. You wouldn't want to look at individual columns. And the other main reason is when you have arrays in a JSON files, they're not necessarily having a limited number of occurrences. They could be unbounded. So it'll be impossible for us to write equity to turn those into columns here. In this case, we've assumed that actually we are only ever going to get two occurrences of payment descriptions, but you never know what the sending system might get sent a third one. And in that case, actually, we won't be using the third one. So the better approach is to not have two separate columns, to have two separate records. So if you had another record with the payment type 5 and the values isn't available and the column name could be just payment type description value or something like that, and you'll always join to this column and you will always pull data from this column, and you wouldn't have to worry about the number of occurrences or number of columns. So that's the better approach. That's what is normally done. But unfortunately, you can't do that with a JSON value function. You will have to use the OPENJSON function. So let me show you how that can be done. I'm going to simply copy the SQL we already have and then make the corresponding changes. So let me put that here. And we're not using the JSON value anymore, so I'm going to just put a stop for now and then we'll put the appropriate columns later on. And if you remember from the last lessons to use OPENJSON function, we like to use the cross supply to join to the OPENJSON function. So that's what I'm going to do, a cross supply to OPENJSON. And then we need to fill in the JSON document, which is this field here. And that gives us back the two columns, which are the payment type and the payment type description. So let's put them in as well. But the payment type description is no longer about chart 20. That's what we used previously. As you can see, the payment type description is now an array with multiple values and it can be unbounded. And we are going to define that as a JSON because, as you can see, that's a JSON valid JSON in its own right. So we're going to say this one is also in varchar max, and we are going to define that as JSON. And let's run this and see what comes out, and then we'll explore the area. As you can see here, what you get back from there is the original JSON document. So that's the JSON doc we got there, and then the payment type as you expected. And then the payment type description is an array with values. So you've got the array with the 2 elements here, an array with 1 element here, 1 occurrence, I should say. As you can see, this itself is a valid JSON in its own right. So what you can do is you can apply a further OPENJSON on that, and then that'll explode the way for you. So let me show you how that can be done. So again, you do the cross supply here. But this time, instead of the JSON doc, you're going to send in this field here, which is the payment type description, and that should give us back the elements within the payment type description. So let's use the column names here. And here we've got this subtype, as you can see here, and the values. So let me do subtype, and that can be a small int, and the value now is about 20. So let me run the entire select statement one more time. I made a mistake. I think subtype should have an underscore. That's why it's not giving us any values. So let me just put the underscore there and then present it again. So now you're seeing all the values we expect to see. So we got the original JSON document payment type and then the payment type description, which is an array, and now that's been exploded into red cards as well. So as you can see here for the payment type 5, we've got 2 values within the array, and both of them are in 2 separate cards. So in order to see what's required, you would just have to select them here. So that will be your payment type and the value. You don't want to have that called value. I would have wanted it to be called something different, so we know how to rename it here. So let's say we want to rename it to payment type description value. And as you know, you need to specify the path. So that would be $value within that JSON. So you can use that column name now to select from. So that is here. And if I just run the entire statement, you would get the output as you would want to see. So that is your payment types and the description values. And for type 5 alone, you've got 2 values. Everything else is just 1 value. So the result is what we expected to see. I hope this has given you a good understanding about how to use the OPENJSON to explode arrays like we've done here. And if you have any kind of complex nested JSON structures, you can use the same approach as well. So that's the end of this lesson. I'll see you in the next one.